We want to start off with a reminder that we are not doctors. Before you make any changes or try something new, always consult with your doctor and medical team first. Chronic illness can vary from patient to patient, so it's always best to consult with your own doctor for what is best for you.
Welcome back to IBD Determined. I'm your host, Mason Harvey, and I speak from the role of a patient, and I have Crohn's disease.
And I'm your other host, Michelle Harvey. I am Mason's mom, and I speak in the role of a caregiver on this podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about kind of like a first in a series on biologics, on treatments, costs. We talked about step therapy on one of our previous episodes, and it's really easy for everyone to complain about the situation. Biologics are too expensive. Insurance is not being fair to us. There's all these like finger pointing going on, but then you start to really figure out how do we actually
fix it?
Yeah. How do you fix it? And I think that is a big problem. And I think part of that is understanding kind of the different aspects of this and figuring that out before you just try to say, well, people developing biologics should do it cheaper. They should just...
I feel like another thing, just something to point out for those who want to learn a new term. From my writing, no, not from my writing class, from my communications class, we learned a thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically where, here, picture this. You're at a basketball game, someone messes up, and they lose the point. And you think to yourself, I could have done that so much better.
Yeah.
I could do it better if they just let me do it. It's the idea that when you haven't practiced it or you don't know how it works exactly, you think it's so much easier than it is.
Right. Like, oh, that looked so easy. Yeah. I could do that.
And so first thing here, with insurance and biologics and the cost of it, with the Dunning-Kruger effect, it'd be so easy, just lower the prices, or why is it, or insurance just shouldn't do this, but there's so much more to it that you have to think about than just thinking that.
And part of that is having discussions that help you better understand like this whole situation. It's very easy when you don't understand something to believe anything you're told. And if somebody's like, oh, they don't want to find a cure, they want to keep you sick, they don't want to find a cure.
So who's just like gotten ill, they're like, really?
And people though go, oh, that makes sense because they're making a ton of money off you being sick. There is so much more to it. And if we all just make assumptions because we don't educate ourselves, this problem will remain, and you can blame anything you want. It doesn't matter. It's not going to solve the problem. The important thing is understanding aspects, so maybe we can find an approach. So today we're starting in the very beginning with understanding how these new treatment options have changed Crohn's disease in the past 20 years.
It's kind of amazing.
It's not like that long. Like 20 years ago was 2005, 2006, before you were born, but not. Before. But what is amazing is how different it is now. I think it is because of how new biologics really are that lack of understanding and fear of these has driven a lot of these conspiracy theories, things like that. And just the expense of these is enough to make someone say, no, I'm not gonna be able to take that, and that'll be another coming up in this series. We're going to discuss the programs that help you guys with these. So we're not affiliated with any bioscience companies.
No.
We don't receive anything from this. And, if anything, our lives are much more expensive because of these treatments. But Mason's life is much better. So there's that.
You can be thankful for that.
Yeah.
People say that they're not trying to find cures. Meanwhile, this disease, it's obviously not new, but it's in terms of research and in terms of human time, it is still very new. Because it might seem like, oh, it's been here for, I don't know, the exact number of years. I remember that I wrote a paper on it, so I should remember it, but I don't.
Yeah.
But I remember being like, oh, well, we should figure that. We should have figured that out in that amount of time. But then when you think about how short amount of time something seems like, 20 years sounds like, wow, that's a long time considering that's longer you know, how treatments have changed in the past 20 years. That's longer than I've been alive. And so that sounds like a lot of time. But when you think of how much has changed in that 20 years, it's like it's a snap with the fingers in that amount of time, how much has passed.
Well, if you had been born just a little earlier, these treatments that you're on right now would not have been an option. So that is something. Mason seems so young. He seems like, to me, it's always like, oh, he's so young and he's on, you know, with still there and on these other things that he's on. But if Mason had been born a little younger and diagnosed at a little different age, the options would not be the same. We're looking at, 20 years ago, which is even further than that, but it's still a really short amount of time. But the reason why this is important to talk about, because we're going to discuss, we're not going to go into right now, all the different, ways to treat this disease, all the ways that this disease is maybe several, if not more than that, types of diseases that are just, like under the Crohn's disease heading. So we're not covering that today. We're starting, but we're going to do like a series of these because we really want to educate you guys. And I hope you stick around and listen because it should be interesting. I'm not going to try to make it boring. And yeah, and we're going to start at the beginning so we can better understand maybe what is going on. And if you have Crohn's disease, you want a treatment. You don't want to just sit around waiting for a cure to be found and not be treated. So there have been ways they treated this in the past. 20 years ago, they had what they called, this is through what I looked up online, so you guys can find this as well. The approach to treat Crohn's was a step up therapy. So they, start at the bottom and you progress up. You'd start on mild drugs. And then as each of those failed, then eventually you'd move on to the biologic. And, again, 20 years ago, we're going to talk about what that option was. But you would start at the bottom and slowly move up. Now, what they're doing is they're going straight to the top. Like with Mason's diagnosis, straight to a biologic. It wasn't that step up where, and because the important part of stepping up therapy, you have to fail.
Just having to fail, there's also the danger because Crohn's is progressive, and when it's not being treated, it is continually getting worse. If the doctor back then, they're like, oh, well, we'll just find what it takes. We'll eventually get there. But all the while, you're still getting worse, and then it's going to be harder for the whatever works for you. It's going to be harder
like
for
once you get there
to treat it.
It's like, okay, because these aren't like these are meant to maintain and keep the disease in remission.
This isn't like, hey, we're working backwards with the disease. It's getting healed. No, it's just pausing it.
And I would say even for you, when 6 years, it's been almost 6 years since you're diagnosed, I think things have changed again because they had you on steroids, methotrexate, and they had you on Remicade. And I think, nowadays they're really trying so hard because Mason became steroid dependent. It took a very long time to get his body off of those steroids. And so I think there's more attention being paid to what is happening with these alternate theories and alternate therapies and trying to get them straight to something that will maintain it without having to just treat it with these other things that are going to keep you and have other side effects.
Because steroids aren't right to be on.
And we're going to go into that. We have we'll talk more about that. And so first, like one of the things is 20 years ago, because we just mentioned that if you did that step up therapy and as you failed all the lower class of drugs, you go on to the biologic. 20 years ago, that was Remicade and Humira. They are both anti-TNF biologics.
So, like you're saying, there's different subclasses. Like, Remicade didn't work for me, which is an anti-TNF. But Solera did, which isn't an anti-TNF.
But 20 years ago, that
20 years ago, it didn't exist. So, if the anti-TNF doesn't work for you, there was no other option to go on something else.
Like
it was the one choice.
Right.
The one big choice.
And it was a good choice.
It was a good choice.
To be fair, it wasn't like, oh, this is, I believe that, I don't have the statistics. We did this in another podcast. I think it's like 50% of people respond well to it, which is a huge portion. So it's still worth trying because it is so good.
Stay clear. I'm not saying Remicade doesn't work. I'm not saying Remicade.
No, there's lots of people on it.
I'm not saying it's bad. Remicade was the first biologic. Yes, it was the first biologic for Crohn's disease. Obviously, not all treatments are going to work for everybody. It's all going to be different. So I'm not saying that Remicade is bad, but it was the first one, and it had to start that way. There always had to be a first. And at that time, there just wasn't enough research for the other treatments to be there.
Which is why we're talking about this
so
first.
Remicade was a good thing.
Because our next ones we're going to see why biologics are so expensive, why the expense is there. It's difficult. And so getting to Remicade and Humira was a huge victory. That was life-changing for many of these patients. And Humira is like the subcutaneous injection. Remicade is the IV infusion. And so Humira came, I believe, a little bit after, but they are the same class. So typically, like if Remicade doesn't work for you, you wouldn't go to Humira because it operates the same. That's how it was explained to us.
That would make sense.
Even though it was still a huge breakthrough, it was because prior to that, it was steroids and immunomodulators. And those were the ones that were primarily used. Some of these are still used. People sometimes still don't want to try biologics. Maybe biologics haven't worked. There's many reasons.
That even if you go through all the biologics, you still won't find one that works.
I mean, I think that's very small.
Very, very small chance.
Right. But it's still hard to get through it and try all of them. And in Mason's case, we got fortunate because we found out dual worked. And so a lot of people try individual biologics. They go through the classes, but a lot of times without, if your doctor hasn't recommended trying dual, which is another step up in fear for people.
Oh, great.
They're like, I don't want to do one. Now it's two. So that's understood. So we're not advising any of you on any of this. In our experience, for us, we want to get Mason off the steroids, and other people back in the day, that's how they used to treat it before Remicade, before Humira. It was these steroids and immunomodulators. And we have a little chart here, which I pulled up because it's what is interesting is that older treatments like steroids, I mean, you had the visual issues with it, like, moon face, weight gain.
Obviously, when you're trying to treat a disease that could physically take over your body,
right? You're not
worried about, oh, hey, I have moon face.
But the reason that's important is because biologics don't cause that.
No.
And not a reason, again, now if that was the only reason, if steroids were better for you and you were just trying to avoid moon face,
oh my God,
that would be terrible. But it's like saying this is a win-win here because there's other things that are happening with those older treatments. And obviously, yes, there are risks and there are different things with both of these. So this is not to do that. This is just kind of like hey, this was a treatment before and this is what happened. And so some people were unhappy because they get those mood swings. They would get the weight gain. And those are just the exterior. Now, as far as infection risk, with the older treatments, there was high risk for viral and common bacterial infections.
Not good.
And that isn't good. Now, with biologics, there's still an increased risk, and they have, for serious infections. And then it says like biologics like Entyvio do have a lower systemic risk because they're gut specific. So the other ones are more overall. So one has an increased risk, but the other ones had a high risk.
But obviously there's still a risk for those two.
And then on the impact of your internal organs, with the previous treatments before biologics, there was a potential for osteoporosis, and diabetes, liver, kidney toxicity. These are all things, we did, and for kids especially, it can affect growth, bone development, all of that. With biologics, that isn't the issue. They do have low rates of liver or kidney toxicity, but lower when compared to the other treatments. And there is no widespread patterns of organ damage. At
least it doesn't cause osteoporosis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, the disease itself, too, it's important to know it can do that, but steroids definitely don't help. And, we don't know, like with Mason, if that was contributed to your bone thinning issues. I don't know, or it was the disease, but
steroids are just
those were, the options that were given before were not as good for the body. And I know biologics seem scary and there are risks, but I don't know if people ask the same when they're given the options for the immunomodulators or steroids. And I think if you ask to see that, actually something like not funny, but like Dr. Miller, when Mason had his well check with his pediatrician, and we were kind of talking about this, how these biologics, and you see these commercials and everyone's like, woohoo, they're dancing on they're singing in a concert, or they're sitting in a toilet in their kid's dorm room. Like
they're sitting, or there's this really cursed commercial where there's this guy driving a semi truck, he opens the door and he's sitting on a toilet in the semi truck.
So we were just kind of talking about these commercials and, how it, like, especially a kid watching it and you're on these and it's like portraying it this way and you're like, what? And then at the end, they're like, and it causes this and this and may cause this and may cause this. And, so he's like, read like on your common pain medicine that everybody takes. Okay. He's like, read an insert on that. that's real fun. That's what he told us. He literally said, that'll be fun.
Real fun.
And he's like, read through that, because a lot of us like ask more when we hear biologic, and because we see these scary commercials, but we don't ask the same when we're taking just regular pain medication for a headache. So it is interesting when you really look at things, not saying they are the same, but it's just knowledge and just knowing that. And basically, nowadays what we have, so back 20 years ago, again, not that long ago, it was the one class of the anti-TNF like treatments for biologics. Now we have new categories. We have the anti-integrins, which are like Entyvio, you're on, which is more gut specific. We have IL-23 inhibitors, which he's also on, and JAK inhibitors, and
which I'm not on.
No, and that is like that came about, I believe, after you were diagnosed. So that wasn't even an option.
No. So that just came out too.
Yeah, and now what they're working on is TL1A inhibitors, and those are in development. And I'm sure there's other classes that we are not aware of yet that are in the process. What that means is that they're figuring out, in all of this, no, we don't have a cure.
No. But look at how much they're getting done. Look at how much the scientists are, solving with this.
And I think they're also proving something, that this disease is not one type of disease. And that is probably why we have not found a cure.
Because a cure, if they made one, it could work for one person. A cure may work. But then for, I don't know, 100 other people, we don't feel any significant changes. We aren't noticing any different. It feels about the same. And you can make a cure, well, in theory, you could for a specific target group. But in order to be able to make a cure, you need to find the causes and be able to actually understand what is happening with all of these different patients.
Right. Which is important when you look at how this disease has changed being treated in 20 years. In 20 more years from now, we're going to see something very different. And so I think people get so focused on being angry because they haven't found a cure that they're not grateful too for what is happening. Understood that you guys want a cure. But I think it's important to, instead of just walking around holding anger, like people don't care about us, I think it's important to note that people do care and people are doing this. Research is important. These are things that we're trying to kind of talk about in this episode, not to convince anyone that biologics are the only way to treat this. No. But we're trying to help you better understand. We're leading up to this. We're going somewhere with this, but this was the first step in having you guys understand the differences and what has changed in the past 20 years. Also something 20 years ago, the goal was to just manage the symptoms. So if you were feeling better, that was a victory. And I mean, I think we agree.
Yeah,
that is, right? That's huge. That's what everyone wants, is to feel better.
Sure. I want to cure, but at the same time, hey, I'm feeling good.
Right. But that was 20 years ago. That was the goal. And people were like, and because a lot of people were not, the symptoms were not being managed. That's the reality of it, is it was, these are like happy pills that you take and everything is great.
Happy pills.
It's like, this was situations where people were surviving. They weren't thriving. They were not feeling great. They're having surgeries. And
look at where we've gone now.
That was 20 years ago when they're just trying to manage symptoms. Now they have recognized that they shouldn't just focus on feeling better, but the goal should shift to, managing the symptoms, but to also have mucosal healing. So when they do scopes on you to look and see visibly inside, how is that looking? Because, as we know, we just talked about in a recent episode with calprotectin that Mason was showing signs of active disease again, but he's feeling great.
Yeah, but I'm feeling great.
So technically,
we've reached the goal.
Technically to how they used to treat it, managing symptoms. But the problem is this disease is quiet. And it sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden it's vicious, and you have a whole new problem. They have figured out that beyond just feeling good, they want to see if there's overall healing inside the body going on. The way that they're monitoring this is just like with Mason. The new ways that they're doing this is they're realizing that they can monitor through calprotectin and blood tests. If markers start to demonstrate a trend, like we just went through, then there is potential that a flare is starting. So the goals have shifted from just kind of like giving you something.
How are you feeling, to actual physical
take this
proof.
And not really looking at, you're taking all these steroids. What is it doing to your body? Because, but it's difficult. it's a catch. It's like that with a lot of diseases. You take something and it makes you more sick in another area, and then you're treating the pill, you're treating whatever, you have to take something else to treat that side effect from that treatment. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. So it's tough. None of this is easy. None of this is all doctors want to do is they want to help the patient. And that's the end of the day, is how do you feel? And they want them to feel better. But the goals have shifted a bit to say we can do better with this. And so I wanted to mention that because I felt like that was important, because that does, by shifting those goals, that does mean there's going to be more of an approach to using biologics to treat this disease.
People say that they found a cure, but they're not trying to release it for money. And, I don't think that is the case. And my reasoning for that is we have gone to multiple, we've been in multiple biologic companies and seeing the machinery, the scientists, all the work that goes into it. At first, you don't think, if you don't know what's going on, you don't know all the work that's going into it. But when you go to these places and personally see what is going on, you take a step back and you're like, wow, that's a lot. And it's all for a certain biologic.
As Mason mentioned, we've been fortunate enough to visit them. We're not just reading this online. We're not just arguing about this. We've been invited into several. And, Mason was actually asked to speak at Mirador Therapeutics in May. And so he's going to be speaking in a fireside chat with their CEO. And that's a great opportunity for us to see the other side. And I think that's the only fair way to make decisions, is to learn. And that's what we're here doing for you guys, is to teach you and help educate you. That's important too. And so we're not speaking here in defense of anything, but I think it's just, like we said, just knowledge. And obviously we're all going to feel differently. Some of you are going to watch us and say, absolutely never will take a biologic. And that's that's okay. That is your option. It is your body. It's, how you want to treat the disease, and the path you've come up with your doctor is your own personal deal. And that's okay.
I know there's somebody out there who is not thinking about the side effects entirely or how they're going to be feeling, because they're just so afraid of the idea of getting an injection or an infusion.
And that's understandable too.
But when you're not thinking of all the side effects and all of the benefits that can come from a biologic, or the bad things that can potentially happen from just a steroid, you'd probably rather take a pill than sit in an infusion center for 2 hours.
We have previous episodes we've done on this whole topic. And so I think it's worth it, head back if you haven't watched it. Take a listen, take a watch, see what we discuss in that, because that's important too.
And if you are just afraid of the idea of getting poked, then we have some videos about how you can handle the pain and get in the mind space where you can.
And really, I think the important thing to consider is time helps with this. Not so much as when it's a progressive disease, time may be against you. But as far as your mental capacity, like when you are first diagnosed, it is a lot to understand, to absorb. The treatments are scary. And over time, that will change, and you will start to be in a different part of your journey with it. So
to learn more.
That's important. But thank you guys for listening today. I know this may not have been like a topic everyone's probably like super interested in, but I think it's important to look back 20 years ago to see where we are now, and to maybe refocus on the options that are available and what these treatments have meant for this community, and for showing you guys you're not being ignored.
No.
There is people.
There are people trying to help you.
Right. Obviously, nobody wants to work for free.
No. No. It is expensive.
Unless you're a volunteer.
Yeah, unless you're a volunteer. Yeah.
But people still need to make a living. But so anyways, we're going to go more into that side of things in the upcoming episodes. And hopefully, by doing this, maybe someone will have a different perspective on how to solve this problem. This will be like several layers here, and we're going to get to that. So you guys will be an active part of understanding what it takes and understanding these treatments.
Make progress with Crohn's disease.
So thank you guys for listening. This wasn't a super long episode.
Well, we can go a little bit longer. I'm sure they're waiting for our jumping spider update.
I was waiting for that. I was like, is he gonna go the entire podcast and not mention this?
Well, we have fans probably because of it. They're gonna be ordering shirts with the jumping spiders on it, because
we did have 4.
Yeah, we have 4.
Jason found another one at work, but it was crazy and so cute though. It was like it come look at you and
it was very cute. Now,
but it was like high energy.
It was scary when we're trying to put it in its little terrarium. It could dodge everything.
Yeah,
you're trying to put it in, but it goes right under.
And it was smaller,
yeah.
So it was like not great, like easy to catch.
No.
It's kind of a challenge.
It was very interesting. It wasn't. Now I know it sort of looked like a wolf spider, but it definitely wasn't one. With the way it behaved, and I know maybe in some cases it could be similar, but they look a little bit different too. I believe it was a tan jumper, which is California native.
Yeah, a native one. So it wasn't. I mean, it did look like a native one here. It was definitely not like our other like Felix or Jelly Bean.
No, it was very interesting. And one thing that I noticed that was kind of strange with it is most jumping spiders. I know there's a word for this. I've forgotten it. But they like to hang on vertical surfaces or upside down, so they can see well and stuff. This dude, I'm assuming it was a male because of how it looked. I can't be too for sure because I didn't observe it as much as I would have liked.
Very small.
It's very, very tiny.
Fast. Very small.
But it was very interesting because he would go down to the ground more than all the others would, and he would find a little nook to hide in on the ground, or he'd dig a little spot in the ground and make a little burrow. But then he would run back to the top and hang out there the rest of the day. But then the other half of the day, he'd run back down and sit on the bottom. And it was a very interesting behavior because I've never seen a jumping spider do it. Now, we did do some research on it and found that could mean that they were going to lay eggs or that, I don't know, there was something else. They might be molting.
Just be common behavior. They might just enjoy doing that.
Tan jumping spiders specifically like to make burrows on the ground. I don't know, but it was very interesting.
But we no longer have it to observe because we released it.
It didn't escape.
We released it in our yard because it did look to be like adult, not subadult. Even I believe it was small, but Goldie is smaller than Goldie's even smaller. So this one, we released it back out. It had so much energy and it just seemed, like the right thing to do. So she is, I don't know, living in our backyard now, hopefully happy.
Or she is in I don't know, another state by now.
Yeah, that thing
He's been
fast.
running. He's been running
so fast. So we still have Felix, Jelly Bean, and Goldie, and I feel like this is slowly evolving into another podcast on entomology.
Well, I think we're gonna have to leave it there.
And we'll let Mason host that one, and I will just appear on there and learn things because that's how it has been my whole life since I've had him. And even my poor sister, we were at a birthday and at dinner, and she's like, "I didn't know you were so into these bugs and these," and I'm like, "Well, I didn't know either." Like, I get like once Mason started discussing and talking about all of them and we were really looking at them, like all of a sudden it was like, oh, these creatures are so important. They're just because they're so small, we can overlook them or people just squish them. And so anyway, so Mason has definitely taught me an appreciation.
Just know that spider that you squished probably had a sleep schedule.
I know. We found, yeah. So most of you did not tune in for this today.
Well, that's why it's at the end. So
so you could have already just ended this and you're like on your way. But for those of you still listening and heard our update, thank you.
Yeah.
And we're working on a big project right now that we can't talk about yet, but we are working on that and that's taking up a lot of our time. But as soon as that is complete and Mason's college semester is complete, we're going to be focusing again on the Karmatude clips because that is really important to us. And hopefully we can go to Disneyland to get some more footage too.
That would be fun.
So we'll be doing that. We have not forgotten about that, but
no, they're like, where is that?
Yeah, and then our candle line, we're also going to be working on
reviving it.
Yes, it's been tough because Mason has been so busy, and it's like I'm not gonna force him to do this, or So we had a conversation. So we're doing some spring candles. So we're busy. We're still working towards the goals, which are helping raise funds for the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, helping patients, providing support. So we are still doing all of that. And so just want you guys to know we still care. We are not giving up.
We're never
And
giving
thank goodness
up.
for good lighting, because I don't probably look as tired as I should. So between the lights, things are different. So
Well, yeah, turn out the lights and we fall asleep.
bright lights, so it really helps make you appear fresh and revitalized. So, anyways, guys, thanks for listening.
Yep.
You can watch us on Instagram and see all of our adventures at Team IBD Determined. You can also follow the Reggie Project, which is something else we're going to be continuing to work on. And you can listen to us on any podcast station like iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and check the link in our description so you can see other places you can listen. And I'll let you do this part because it's always your favorite part.
And if you want to watch us, because why wouldn't you? Because we have good lighting.
Yeah. So you can be like, how tired does she look? Right.
But if you want to watch that, there's also YouTube. There's also YouTube podcasts. But if you're on YouTube, why would you be on podcasts? There's also us on YouTube, because you already knew that. But if you are on YouTube, make sure to give us a like and subscribe. And if you want to be notified every time we post a new video, make sure to hit that bell icon. And also leave comments, because we love to hear you guys' feedback, as long as it's positive and happy, or, if you're sad. But just don't be like...
Or asking us to talk about something that you'd like us to research, or you'd like to hear our take on it, or what Mason has done with it. We're more than happy to do that too. So please let us know what else we can talk about. And we're just going to kind of launch into this little series here. And next time we'll be back with, kind of talking about why the conception that bioscience companies are trying to prevent a cure came about, and why that's potentially not the case. And so I hope it'll kind of change your perception. Nobody needs to be angry. This disease makes you angry enough.
Yes, it does.
So I think it's better to try and look at both sides of
Silver
things
lining.
and look at everything, right?
Yep.
So with that, guys.
Oh, yes. And on April 1st, we will be releasing a Instagram page for the jumping spiders.
Right.
Because nobody's going to catch that.
No. Oh my God. I'm like, please don't do that, because it'll turn into my issue, because you're like, let's start it.
I said on April 1st.
Right. Which is good.
Yeah.
Anyways, you guys will have a good weekend, work week, afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you're starting your day or ending your day with us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
And,
is it going to be Easter by then?
I think Easter's in 2 weeks from when we're filming. So
yeah, well,
that means that we're going to have to film on a different day.
Oh, shoot.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Enjoy.
Yeah. So we'll probably see you guys after the Easter holiday with our next episode. Yeah. So stay tuned, and we'll see you guys in a few weeks on the next episode.
Have a good day.
Great. Bye.
We hope you will stick around, tune in, and reach out to us with your own journeys. We are excited to give you an inside view of what it takes to be a caregiver and what it's like to be a patient.
And most of all, we hope you'll maybe be able to play something you hear on here that might help you in your own life. Sometimes life changes, and it's all about how you handle the journey.